Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Logistics Landscape webinar. We've got a large audience joining us today, and we're going to take just a moment to allow everyone to get logged in before we begin. Please stand by for the start of our presentation. Let's begin. Welcome to our Logistics Landscape conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about the freight forecast for the year ahead and some of the current market realities. We'll also share some strategies that leading companies are using to manage their transportation and supply chain network challenges. We're excited to partner with Truckstop today to share insights from their organization's Chief Relationship Officer, Brent Hutto. We've also have our own Vice President of Product Management, Vicki Warker. But before we officially introduce Brent and Vicki to our content, a couple of quick housekeeping items. My name is Michael Willard, and I'm a marketing strategist for MercuryGate, and I'll help our presenters and our audience navigate our conversation today. All attendees are in muted mode today. We're going to be recording today's session and share it with you shortly after it concludes. You can also look for a recording of this webinar in the resources section of our website. It should be under the Knowledge Resources area later today. Speaking of resources, please notice the related content that we provided for you here on our webinar platform. Just click the links to access that content. You can also click the links near our presenters' names to connect with them directly. Our presenters do have a lot of information to share with you today, but we're planning to field your questions at the conclusion of the conversation. So please submit those questions at any time using the Q&A feature in the On24 webinar platform. We'll respond to as many questions as possible during our broadcast. With that out of the way, let's get to our presenters. Today, we have our Vice President of Product Management. It's Vicki Warker. Vicki, to get us started, why don't you give us an introduction of yourself, and then we'll let Brent introduce himself. Vicki, so let's start with a glimpse into what you do here for MercuryGate and a little bit about what you do and your background.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. I'm Vicki Warker, Vice President of Product Management here at MercuryGate. I have responsibility for setting our strategic product roadmap and the things that we offer to the market to help customers manage their crazy world of transportation and freight of all kinds. And my background is in software and technology for the last 30 years and supply chain software, SaaS software, for the last 10.
Thanks so much. And of course, we have Brent Hutto as well. He's a Chief Relationship Officer for Truckstop. So Brent, I'll ask the same of you. Tell us a little bit about what you do and your background that's brought us here today.
Well, thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. And thank you to you and to Vicki and all the great people at MercuryGate for having us on. You know, you don't get through life without having great partners, and MercuryGate's a great partner, Truckstop, and to the marketplace to bring in great solutions and help more efficiency in the marketplace. I've been with Truckstop for 12 years. I've been, previous to that, I was in another part of the transportation industry for 15. And so over 25 years experience inside of transportation logistics. And I love what I do. I get the great opportunity to do this. And Truckstop itself, we serve the open spot market for anybody that's not a client of ours or doesn't have knowledge of us. And it's connected to the greater overall full truckload marketplace in moving freight around the United States. But we've been doing it for almost 30 years, and this coming July will be 30 years for Truckstop. And we love what we do. We get to serve a great part of the marketplace, and around $150 billion to $200 billion worth of freight moves or is seen by the Truckstop platform. And the data I'm presenting today is a reflection of that data itself. So you can trust that it's got high integrity to it.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect segue. Speaking of the marketplace, and thank both of you so much for being here. But as we talk about the marketplace and what you're seeing and into that data, Brent, let's ask the question on everybody's mind, or at least around this time of year every year, is that freight recession over? Although in our conversation, that may not even be the right question to ask, but let's just start there with the simple, is the freight recession over?
Right. Yeah, Michael. Yeah. And what I would say to you is that is the freight recession over? What I'd say is we never really had an actual freight recession. And what I would say to you is this, is that overall, and before we go to the first slide, I'm going to show you a visual on the first slide talks about this, is that what we had is a market correction. And that's really important to look at. And what I say is that if a marketplace is behaving normally and it has a downward action or down economic action against its normal, then you call that a recession. Or if you have 2 quarters of that, or you have a downward strength, you call that a recession. But when you have something like we went through in the pandemic, you have an incredible increase in the marketplace in freight that needed to be moved and a great rate marketplace for all the transportation providers. That was completely abnormal. So it was so abnormal that it was the greatest increase in a marketplace that we've had since 1980 in deregulation. And so when I say correction, I kind of, and I'm not trying to just poke fun at my great friends in the marketplace that call it a recession, is that what we had as a market correct, and it corrected back to normal. And you want our marketplace to correct back to normal because we're a supply and demand marketplace. So if you'll go to the first slide, Vicki and I can talk through this a little bit. I know Vicki's got a great point on this one as well. All right, so notice I put freight correction. And what I mean by is correction, if the first, I like to use kind of fun graphics on here. If you look at the first flash lightning bolt, that was the pandemic. That was the 2 week. We were going home from 2 weeks to kind of calm things down inside of the pandemic we were going through. We were beginning to experience, and no one knew what was going on. We didn't know how to react. Our government tried to make the best decisions we could, and we tried to make great decisions through it. Well, these decisions changed people's behavior because what happened was when everybody moved home, we started buying differently. In other words, we're all at home. We all have things we want to purchase because now we're going to be working from home. And it created the greatest buying market in recent history in the United States, at least mostly in all of our generations. And what you see from the first lightning bolt to the third one is the expansion of the marketplace, 26 months of expansion of freight availability needed to move. This slide is a reflection of a load availability inside the spot market. Each individual pillar, if you look close enough, is a week. All right, so that shows you how things went up. Well, the red line is normal. Right, that's the normal marketplace that we normally enjoy inside of the spot market. Why do I use the spot market? Well, it's the greatest reflection of dynamic change inside of all of freight that's moved in the world, because this information you're looking on the screen, this visual is a representation of information that reflects information that's only 7 days old in the marketplace. Right, so it has a multiple year line on it, but we get data on the spot market of freight in the United States. It's only 7 days old. Most data that you're ever going to get that's trusted in the marketplace is anywhere between 60 to 90, sometimes 180 days old. Well, you can't plan things on 180 days, but you can look at data like this and trust that if it's only 7 days old, I can make corrections of that. And that's why people use the spot market data to sort of forecast a little bit what they're doing because they get it quicker. But back to the slide itself. All right, so we had a 26-month expansion from the first lightning bolt to the third one. The second one is the peak in the marketplace where we had 400% more freight needing to be moved inside of the spot market than normal. Well, what does that create? It creates rates that were normally $2.20. It made them $7.20 a mile. Well, so you can imagine the amount of money that was made in that marketplace. But you'll notice what happened. It did come back down. Starting in 2022, it began to shift back down into a normal market. Now, the reason I love this visual for everybody on this screen, everybody in this webinar, is that it shows you how you need to behave, because most of the time, and the reason this was called a recession was because it went from a really high market to a normal market, but it sure felt like we're falling off a cliff. All right, so came back down to about October 22 to an absolutely normal marketplace. That's why I use this visual. That red line shows you these little peaks and valleys in the marketplace. And so at about October 2022, my good friends in another media group say about May 2023, somewhere between May 2023 and May 2024, full correction and adjustment of the marketplace back to normal. And what I mean by normal is that we get seasonality inside of freight. In other words, does it go up? Does it go down at the normal time periods that it's supposed to? And the reason that I love to use this slide is, and I take it all the way to the right, is that we got normal seasonality this last Christmas. It had a little bit last Christmas, but it wasn't as dramatic as it normally is. But we got normal ups and downs during the Thanksgiving to New Year's holidays. And that's why I'm so excited about kind of what's going to happen in 2025, because, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I know Vicki had a great point on this slide.
Yeah, I actually, when we were talking and prepping for this, First thing I want to point out is everybody's probably looking at it like I did the first time and said, what's the red and green? And the red are those multiple loads that were really not loads. They're duplicate loads because you got somebody out there who's looking for capacity every place they can get it.
Yeah.
And they didn't actually turn into loads. And the green is the actual loads. And interestingly, we saw that in our system. In our TMS, we saw customers looking for capacity in the spot market, booking a big expansion or, requesting rates for many more loads than normal. And the ones that did the best did a combination of looking at the spot market, looking at their contracts, setting up rules that allowed them to prepare for when should I be going off contract, when should I be using spot. And we see their behavior, within our system was absolutely reflected in this slide.
Right. Vicki, great point. So the reason I use this slide, and this is the one I stick to all the time, is it shows pressure in a marketplace because pressure drives rate. If there's more pressure in one market, you're going to have higher rates. If there's less pressure, what I mean is available capacity and the amount of freight that needs to be moved in that certain marketplace. And so if you're a shipper or a broker listening to this webinar or watching this webinar today, then pay close attention to kind of the ups and downs. And what I have experienced with most shippers, if you're a shipper out there and you might be reluctant to use the spot market today, what I can tell you is most shippers that I talk to that experienced the pandemic because they had lots of dependable experience in the spot market are happy to work with their transportation providers, whether it's a broker or a large carrier, and say, look, you move it best way possible. I'm just going to trust it's going to get there because they had such a great experience in all parts of the market, at least in the idea of trying to get the goods there. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Vicki. But pressure is really important. This is an index. This is a pressure index in the marketplace. So let's go to the next slide, Michael. All right, so why do I say it was a correction? Well, it's because the consumers in the United States kept buying and have continued to keep buying. If we had an actual recession, buying goes down. All right, but our consumers have still been optimistic. What's interesting about this slide is that when you look at gross domestic product, GDP, it grew between 2 and 3% over the last 4 years. All right, so that is a normal U.S. economic marketplace. If it's less than 2, we're kind of like having some challenges. If it's more than 3, boy, do we have issues all over the place, and we probably have an inflationary environment. So my point, though, is that look at the bottom of this slide. You look at durable goods, non-durable goods, and services. During the pandemic, services purchasing changed, goods purchasing changed. They flip-flopped. They're usually 60% are services, 40% are goods. They flip-flopped. And you had a massive increase. And that's why we had so much freight on that last slide that was reflected. And that was in the contract marketplace too, where we had so much freight to move. But my point is everything's returned back to normal. So the consumer, why do I say it's not a recession? Wasn't a recession, it was a correction. It's because consumers kept buying. If we go to the next slide. All right, another thing, the U.S. economy, and what inflection? We didn't have much of this. Is a great visual. And certainly we can, and MercuryGate can make these slides available to you for you to use it at any time you need to. So you'll notice that the downward bars are 2008. And this is the great recession, right? When all of our 401ks became 201ks. And boy, was that painful. A very, very painful thing for all of us. And that was an actual recession. But look at and remember that trucking is a derived demand of the U.S. economy. So derived demand, it reacts as the U.S. economy reacts. So look at the upward bars, the upward 2 sections of bars on the right. 2022, 2024, 2 years apart. 2022, we're still in the pandemic, but look how normal look how equal they are to each other and how normal. This is my point. We did not have a recession in our economy, so we didn't necessarily have a recession. We had a correction. We did have a rate recession. I'll talk about that. Because that was a reality. But my point is that everything goes on the available freight or the volumes of freight that need to be moved, because without them, you don't have rates. So the idea is that our U.S. economy, it's a great reflection of that because trucking is a reflection of it. And you see where you had the downward markets in the 2009, which is a real recession. Then you can see where I can see the consumers on the previous slide and then trucking on this slide where it didn't feel like one to anybody. However, there's other changes to that too. If you'll go to the next slide, Michael. Great. Okay, so here's why it wasn't a trucking recession, at least not for loads. Okay, this is a super great visual on this, and I know that that Vicki's got a great point to bring on this, so I want to make sure that I get her ready to talk about this. So, it didn't feel like a trucking. So this is a reflection of full truckload freight that's moved in the United States, the contiguous 48 states. All right, so remember the last slide where we showed the economy and the downward bars in 2009? Well, okay, well, let me draw your eye first to the first, all the way to the left-hand side with the first lightning bolt, where that was 2000. So this is a 25-year span. Notice where it starts on the bottom left and we end up on the top right. In other words, it goes upwards and to the right. Well, you want most good any economic measurements going up and to the right. That's a good thing. So I'll land on that last point. My point is, if you look at the blue line is the trend. What were the expected loads to move in the marketplace, and how did the marketplace perform against it? All right, so you'll notice the green line. There's a green line on here. It follows the actuals. So what did we actually experience in the marketplace? Well, you see that first giant dip, the second lightning bolt. Well, that was the Great Recession. That was the banking crisis, where it was a real deal. And here's the thing I want to draw your eyes to. Notice that second lightning bolt taking that green light and going up and to the right, but notice it didn't move above trend until 2019, until we went through the 2018-2019 ELD positive marketplace for transportation. But notice how long it took it to recover. I'm going to just hold that kind of in your mind for a second. Look at the third lightning bolt. That was the 2 week. We're going to stay home for 2 weeks. So we came out of the pandemic, but look at what the line has done since the pandemic truly became an effect in our economy. The line has not dropped below the trend line or the forecasted line, and we thought for sure it was going to bisect it. We thought for sure it was going to go down because it kept talking about, like, trucking recession. Maybe there's going to be economic recession. There was really holistically about a 25% chance of an actual recession in the United States. But the Federal Reserve did such a great job managing inflation that didn't happen, and the U.S. economy continued to grow. The problem was inflation. We'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. Was how it felt to the consumer. Inflation really hit things hard. All right, so it kind of gives you an idea of why we at Truckstop and others have talked about there really wasn't a trucking recession. There was a rate recession, but not a trucking recession because available freight was even greater. Vicki, jump in there with your comment.
Yeah, actually, Clayton, if you don't mind, I want to ask you to go back to slide 6 for just a second. Look at the pattern on slide 6. I'm sorry, slide 7. My mistake.
That's okay.
Look at the pattern. So the GDP is the dotted line, and you see the durable goods, non-durable goods. Now go back to the slide 9 and look at how closely those two things line up. Yeah. How closely truckloads lines up with GDP.
Yeah.
Making your point.
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate you bringing that out. I think it's super important to realize that freight is a reflection of GDP. And when you look at how the gross domestic product grew between 2 and 3%, well, trucking grew between 2 and 3% over the exact same time period. And this goes back to the point, Vicki, that you and I were talking about from our chief economist, where he said the derived demand if it's properly oriented, it should follow along the same curve. So you saw that in the overall economy, and you saw that in the trucking economy. This is why, it just didn't feel like a recession. There was still plenty of freight to move. The rates were a challenge in the spot market, not as much in the contract marketplace. So if you'll go ahead to the next slide, Michael, we'll continue on with this line. Okay, so one of the challenges that created the rate marketplace that we were in was that, when rates go from $2.20 to $6 a mile, anybody can make money in this marketplace. So this is a reflection of supplied capacity and freight in the United States. Okay, so this is over a giant period, a couple of decades, or let's say from 2016 to 2025. So you've got about a decade in there. So the point is, here's what I want you to look. The orange line is supplied freight. When you get an oversupply of capacity in a supply and demand marketplace, you're going to have rates that go down because the person moving the freight, if you're a shipper on this call, you know how it's been the last 24 months. Your rates are really positive because you're able to choose from a multitude of carriers to choose your freight, especially if you're moving in the spot market. So the rate is more agreeable to your budget. If you're a broker, well, it was more difficult, but because what it did to brokers in the marketplace is it pinched their margin because the rate went down. If you were a carrier in this marketplace, it moved your margin even lower because the carrier didn't have enough sort of leverage to push back on rates because it was oversupplied. This was predominantly because we had an increase in the available for hire capacity. And by the way, the reason that you look at full truckload freight for any shipper or broker in this on this call, the reason you use full truckload freight is because it's about 80% of the freight in America. It's the dominant part of it. And so you want to use, you do your basis off full truckload freight. I know some people think, well, what about LTL? What about intermodal? What about all these other segments? Well, there's such a smaller part. Like intermodal is 6% of the freight in America. So you use the dominant part to measure it in the thing. So when you look at how capacity was supplied in this marketplace, it was really the number of entities and the number of trucks that came in really increased dramatically. And even though we've had a giant correction in the marketplace, we're still oversupplied in capacity. Now, that drives the rate down some, but market forces and economic forces drive it down the most, okay? Because if you can't find a truck, you're willing to pay whatever you need to pay to get it to marketplace if you're a shipper. If you can't find a truck and you're a broker, you're willing to pay more for that because you got to get your customers' goods to market. But there's still an oversupply capacity. But here's the thing. They're not really leaving now. Everybody that was going to leave that came in this marketplace that can't make money at a present average rate of $2.35 in the market, they all have left because they all go to other parts of the market where they can make money. And the ones that are in this marketplace can still make a profit at $2.35 a mile. Now, that's in the spot market. The contract marketplace is a different number. But my point about this is that when you're oversupplied in capacity, it does put downward pressure on rates. And I know that most players on this call know that, but the days of putting downward pressure, so 2 years of downward pressure in the marketplace will probably shift more into 2025 and rates will begin to modulate back up. So next slide. All right, so we'll end on this one, on when it comes to, is the recession, I say correction, over? Well, when you look at the rates outlook, this is a really good visual. I put rate optimism on this, but rates are a following metric on load availability, which is the derived demand following metric on the U.S. economy. Okay, we just get the data in the trucking industry. We get the data a whole lot faster, as I mentioned before. So you can actually do some like business adjustments and forecasting on it. So this is why you want to look at the spot market. You want to compare it to the overall market. You want to look at it against the GDP of the U.S. economy to say, okay, well, what's the marketplace going to do? Because look, we're all leaders in this business. So you're on this call because you're a leader. MercuryGate's a leader. MercuryGate's and Truckstop's goal for you is always to provide you information and provide you technical solutions that can help you adjust to what's coming at you. But if you don't see what's coming at you, you get blindsided, and boy, it's hard to adjust to that. So this slide is a great visual to this. Notice the rates from where the marketplace, you'll notice all the way on the left-hand side, 2022, they were up 20%. Well, that's a whole lot in a $1 trillion marketplace. All right, some would say, well, in some marketplaces, 20%, that may be. In transportation, we are a somewhat commoditized marketplace. It is a necessary part of our economy. And so 20% changes when it comes to rates inside of a marketplace that's as big as $1 trillion, and there's not many on the planet that are measured with T's, is a huge deal. So you'll notice it corrected all the way back down to right near the middle end of 2022. But notice what it did for many, many months all the way across. It's about a 26-month period total in the changes. All right, so but notice when they go down on the rates end, if you're somebody who makes a profit on this, then your marketplace for rates was challenged, to say the least. Really challenged. The contract marketplace kind of stayed strong for the first year and then went back down to right at trend. In other words, they were kind of breaking even on trend in the marketplace. The spot market dropped about 30%. And by the end of 2023, 30% lower than it was. So it took a really hard hit for the small players in the marketplace. Now, it came back up 16% in 2024. And so that's why 2025 is looking to be a much more positive market for the owner-operator and smaller players, and a pretty good marketplace of increase for the contract players. And I just say that because if you'll look at this, and this is by FTR Intelligence, the sort of standard for forecasting in transportation, led by Avery Weiss, my good friend there, who does all of the trucking forecasting. But you'll notice what they're forecasting out. Rate increases, not immediate, but across the year. and somewhere between 2 and 5%, depending on the marketplace. You'll probably see a higher amount in the spot market because it was so depressed. This is my point. We've gone all the way through. We've worked all the way through the corrections in the marketplace because, and I'll say this is something very important to take away from this. Supply and demand curves mirror each other. If you had a 26-month increase, likely you're going to have a 26, 28-month decrease in the marketplace before it normalizes back out. So Vicki, that's why, and Michael, that's why with Truckstop is that, and I look at a lot of different data sources, and we have a lot of different relationships. And so that's why if you talk to most of the players in the marketplace, it looks like 2025 is going to be a better rate year for transportation providers who make their profitability on moving freight, and a more balanced marketplace for shippers in the marketplace. In other words, you're going to have a good sort of balance between you and your transportation providers. But in the end, we all need each other. All the transportation providers and the shippers need each other. And so the idea that they need to work fundamentally together is probably something that should be looked at more often than it actually is. So I'll pause there, Vicki, if there's any comments or anything you want to make from that end.
No, I'm good. I mean, I think what this speaks to is, the old adage of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity. The reality here is doing the same thing over and over again does give you a different result because the market changes. And it's insanity not to look at that and look at doing something different.
Yeah. I love that. I love that saying about Albert Einstein. You can't change a system by using the same thinking that created it. You got to think about what's coming at you. And I love that MercuryGate wanted to have this webinar to talk about what are the forces coming at you? What are in the investment world they call those headwinds? What's coming at you some? So I think the next part of this is what can we expect in 2025? Are we ready to transition to that? Fantastic. All right. So Vicki talked about it a little bit. And I really, what's great for everybody in this call is that the conclusion that Vicki just looked at these graphs and said, wow, those are similar. And she picked up on it. And it's Vicki's heart and my heart that we want you to pick up on the same things. And that's why you want to look at GDP no matter what. Well, here's the thing about why you want to look at GDP is that it is the reflection of our marketplace. But look, a healthy economy is good for anybody's business, no matter what. You need to have buyers in a marketplace. And you need to have sellers in a marketplace to be able for it to work. And so as our economy continues to show strength, and so the flat line is the trend of the U.S. economy. The non-flat line, used to say squiggly, but this one's not really squiggly, is the actual. In other words, so we've been above trend or growth. We've been in growth mode since about 2021. You'll notice on the 2020, on the right-hand side of this in 2024 going forward, it actually began to increase some. So the idea of what's coming at you, well, we have a new administration come in. You got to make sure you talk a little bit about that. I make no aspersions on how to vote or what to do. I just know that trucking tends to like conservative administrations because they're just less focused on regulations. They tend to like downplay those more. So a supply and demand and a for-hire economy can grow. And even though I really appreciate what the FMCSA does for our marketplace, certainly less regulations help create more optimism in our market because it creates more profitability. And where there's more optimism and profitability, there's more investment inside. So the idea of what's going to happen going forward, at least these next 2 years, you're going to see more investment in this marketplace, not just by the players in the market, whether if you're a transportation provider, if you're a carrier, if you're a broker, but also by people, investment groups coming in our market. I keep close tabs on the investment community as well, and there's a whole lot. Last 2 years, not much optimism on the investment side. A little bit, but not a whole lot. Boy, there's a whole lot coming into 2025 and 2026. And as they say, if you follow the money, you usually find where the success is, or where at least the growth is in a marketplace. So super important. So our own country is poised to continue to at least grow its normal amount, right? So there's always challenges. There's global challenges, no doubt. There's challenges across the globe that affect us. Remember, we're in a global market, which, Michael, if you go to the next slide, I'll talk about the global marketplace. The United States is the largest economy in the world by a factor of 2. And what I mean by that is that our citizens have disposable income that's twice the amount of the number 2 place economy. That's a good thing. All right, the dominance of the U.S. consumer is not going to change until the buying power of another country can match what America is. Because when you've got disposable income, then you can invest and do and grow things and buy things, and most all those things go on a truck somewhere. All right, so but this is a great slide. And if you don't know this as a shipper and you don't know this as a broker or a carrier that owns a broker in the marketplace, please pay attention to this. This is put out by the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, or the CSCMP, as it's known by an acronym. And it's called the Logistics Managers Index. And it is an excellent index because it is the only index that that displays logistics from a global standpoint. What you're looking at on the screen is a measurement from 6 continents. Now, I don't know anywhere else you can get this data. It's a fantastic piece. I look at 2 things on it. I look at the LMI because if it's, by the way, the basis is 50. If it's above 50, it's growing. If it's below 50, it's receding or it's decreasing. The LMI over on the left-hand side of here is at 57.3. So it's been, but if you'll look over the last many months, it's been a growing phase. It looks like it's decreasing because it went from 58.9 to 4 to 3. But point is it's been above 50, so it's growing globally. Second thing is transportation availability in the marketplace, or capacity availability. It is increasing at an increasing rate. So that drives rates up. Just so you know, even though it's increasing, it got depressed for a while. But so you look at the global marketplace, very important to look at the global marketplace because we are a global player. And those things, all of our goods come in from ports, which affect our costs and all the different things that go into that. So it's very important to look at what's going on, and this is a great reflection. And this thing covers everything from warehousing to transportation to inventory. It covers all of it. It's not just a transportation measurement. So it's a really good piece for you to look at. So I highly recommend you put this in your monthly look at. They report on this every single month. So if you'll go to the next slide, Michael, I'll talk about what's coming at you next. All right. So what else is coming at you on the contract end? Contracts, you got 2 different marketplaces, contract marketplace, spot marketplace. They're kind of beginning to move together, but they're still separate at this time. The contract marketplace, you'll notice that the straight line is the trend, the squiggly line is the actual. This is contract pricing after fuel, because there's always a fuel surcharge in negotiating the contracts. The reason that, like what's coming at you, what I mean by what's coming at you, if you're a shipper in this marketplace, or if you're a broker in this marketplace, if you're a shipper, what you're going to get, and you probably are, because we're right in the beginning of bid season, kind of usually starts in December, is that your transportation providers are asking for probably somewhere between a 2% to a 5% to maybe more in some areas increase over 2024. And what I hear, most shippers are more agreeable to give that to them because it's been such on a downward pressure for the last 2 years. So that's coming at you. All right, if you're a broker playing in this, and believe it or not, a lot of shippers don't know this, and a lot of carriers don't know this. A lot of brokerages handle contract freight. If you're a larger brokerage, if you're a $500 million and up, you probably handle some contract freight where you're working with medium-sized fleets out there to move your freight through a medium-sized fleet that might own 500 trucks. My point is that the pricing is going to begin to modulate back up. All right, so that's super important for you to know, because if you're not working with your transportation providers, they may have more options in 2025 and certainly in 2026 where they can put their capacity. I know during the pandemic, many carriers had to fire some of their shipper customers because they have people to report to too, and they could get 25% greater rates going somewhere else. And there's many relationships that were historic that got kind of put on hold or they were stopped because bottom lines are bottom lines, and that's important. That's important in this marketplace. So remember what I said, when we all need each other. If you go to the next one, Michael, I'll talk about this. This is a super important one. All right. So when I talk about spot freight, remember it's all connected. The entire freight universe of the United States is connected. All right, because of the brokerages that work for carriers and got contract freight, and these brokerages move spot market freight, a predominance of spot market freight, but they're connected because of the same company. 50% of all brokerage companies that work in the open marketplace are owned by asset-based carriers. 50% are non-asset, and they're just a standard third-party intermediary. And so here's my point on this slide. This is a great visual for you. All right, so if you're a shipper, know this. If you're a broker, you're probably already experiencing some of this. All right, so this is the spot market, and you look at the vertical blue bars, and look at the gray squiggly line going across the solid gray line. That's the solid gray line is 2023. The vertical bars are 2024. For 26 weeks, we have had rates in the spot market above where they were in 2023. That is a growing trend. If it's a couple of weeks, you go, it's just one thing. 26 weeks is a somewhat of a beginning functional change in this marketplace. This is why I say the spot market's going to grow even more, or the rates are going to increase even more in 2025, because we had a 16% gross increase in rates year over year from 2023 to 2024 overall in the marketplace. And so they were depressed. Remember, I said they were depressed 30%. They've come up, and they're going to come up even more, because these players have to be solvent in their operations. If not, you're going to lose capacity in a marketplace that moves about 35% of all the full truckload freight. And that is really remarkable. It's the hardest move freight. So you don't want to lose this flexible rubber band of the spot market carriers in the marketplace. So let me go to the next one on this. And so I love this slide because I love the aha moments in freight. And I know Vicki's got a great point on this one. So freight is beginning to be matched differently. All right. So notice this slide. So I always still tell people to draw your eyes. All right. So draw your eyes. You got first column is 80. You know, that's back deregulation. 2000, that's when things changed in the marketplace. We went from 99 to 2000, where everybody thought all the computers were going to shut down. Then you get 2024. So you got, you know, a 44-year time span here. That's an amazing measurement. So here's what so on the left-hand side, look at the light blue. That's the spot market, right? Maybe 4% of the freight in the marketplace was moved in the spot market. It wasn't automated. It was very manual. You got the green. The green is one way, which is also called contract freight. That's one way long haul freight. The orange is dedicated. In other words, that truck's just dedicated to you as a shipper. It's going to go around. You're paying for a round trip on it. And then you've got the blue, the sort of the darker blue, which is the private truck movements in the marketplace. Well, we put all four of those together because those are the dominant four marketplaces that move full truckload freight. But notice how they changed over time. Look at the first 20-year period, 2000. The green got smaller, the light blue got bigger, the orange got bigger, and the private movements got a little bit smaller. Notice again, transfer to today. And I heard this from many class one carriers in the marketplace. And I mean the publicly traded, really big guys that report to Wall Street. They all said, right now, we're getting marginal amounts on our one-way contracted freight. So we're going to take those trucks out of one way. We're going to shift them into dedicated because we can get a better rate, because it makes the shipper much more comfortable when they know they have a truck. So we can get a better rate on that. And we're going to shift some of our contract freight into our brokerage division, because we can get the trucks less expensively and make at least good enough margins to maintain our brokerage. Everybody's got to make a profit. All right. So when you look at this, and I say this because I didn't know it was doing this. I heard it in January last year when I was at the Stifel conference down in Miami. And I asked these two players, I went, what do you mean by that? And they were like, they told me, and I was like, oh, wow. So you're moving those dedicated? They said, yeah, our brokerage model has become, it's not just a nice to have, it's a have to have in our business now, because of the automation in the marketplace and the comfortability of shippers to be comfortable in moving their freight in any part of the marketplace. And so this is a really great one. Now, it will shift back some eventually, but my point is that this marketplace continues to shift. And so Vicki's got a great point on this one too.
Yeah, I think thanks, Brent. I think my point here is you don't have to wait for 20 years for Brent to show you a slide of what's going on.
I hope not.
Right? There are tools within a TMS that will allow you to react dynamically, set up dynamic rate rules. Look, you know, 3PLs, shippers, brokers, they're all trying to make their business more profitable and more efficient. They can use tools to automate the simple everyday, but also set up rules that say, I'm going to use my contracts here unless and until, and then I want to look at spot, and then I may want to cascade down to a digital freight marketplace and in real time see what's available for this lane. You know, that there's all kinds of capabilities to allow those things to happen in an automated fashion, flag up the things for alerts to allow the humans to make the decisions and the system to operate, in a normal everyday manner. And our customers that have done that and really use the tools in the system to make decisions, set parameters, set a dynamic rate manager that says, I'm going to take a standard rate and I'm going to apply a fixed amount of margin on top of that for my pricing to always make sure I'm getting a minimum profit on that load. There's all kinds of capabilities that allow you to not have to know year by year what this looks like. Nobody needs to be an economist here to do this. There are tools that allow you to flex with the market.
Right. Yeah. I really appreciate you saying the thing about the economist, Vicki, because look, here's the thing, man. If you just gain a basic knowledge, and I talk about this all the time. I'm a sales and marketing guy that got on the data side of the business, and I've been working with these economists and analysts and all the different people that measure things all the way down to minutia that help me understand the market better. But in the end, I'm all about profitability. We want goods to get to market for the shippers so they can be sold and they can make their profit. Well, if they don't get there, they can't be sold. If you're a shipper in this marketplace and you're really pushing down super hard on your transportation providers, I realize it's a big market, but you need quality people to deliver your stuff on time, in full, and exactly when you need it to. So that's super important. But they can't do it without making a profit. And I realize that we're in sort of a marketplace that kind of pushes back and forth on each other. But the more beneficially you work with your transportation providers, the more you're going to get your goods delivered. And if you're a transportation manager at a shipping company, manufacturing company, boy, does that make you look good when you don't ever have to worry about what happened during the pandemic when it didn't matter what you paid, you couldn't get a truck. And look, there will be difficult markets that will come back. And so, we're all, and the one great thing about transportation is relational, and we like helping each other. And even transportation likes helping each other. So I love the idea of the more beneficial idea of how all these parties, these three different parties can work together for everybody's benefit. So yeah, I appreciate you saying the thing. You don't need to be an economist. You just need some basic rules. But I'll tell you this thing about the slide where we talked about the dedicated marketplace. If you're a medium and up a manufacturer in this marketplace, and that there's more propensity to go to dedicated because it makes your transportation provider more money, then suggesting it might be a great idea. Or, hey, I'd love to work with you more beneficially in the spot market. I used to have a resistance against that. The point that Vicki and I and MercuryGate and Truckstop want to do is to arm you with the information so you can make the most common sense, forecasted decision for your business so you can adjust no matter what. So yeah, so thank you for making that point about not having to know that. We ready to transition to the last part?
Yep, definitely, Brent. We want to talk about how leading companies are managing customer business. As we get into that, Brent, just want to remind our audience, you can submit your questions into the Q&A panel on the On24, and we'll get to as many of those as time allows at the conclusion of our information. But I know Brent has some more great details that we want to share and discuss about how companies are managing their business in the year ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you, Michael. Vicki, this is Vicki and I talking about this because she and I actually talked through this. And here's the thing. I again, as I mentioned earlier, I love the aha moments because, I've been in this market for over 25 years. And, sometimes you feel like, oh, I've learned it all, sort of thing. It's like not even close. Transportation, it's like a growing child. It just keeps, maturing and changing. And as you think about how just the not invasion, that's not a good way to put it. The opportunity that technology has brought to everybody's operation, whether you're a shipper, broker, carrier in this marketplace, has helped you be able to sustain your business in this marketplace. So technology doesn't solve all the problems. And I know we may talk about AI here for a second, but it doesn't solve all your problems, but it sure helps you have the greatest opportunity to serve the most customers. Or if you're a shipper, be able to have visibility into understanding really how that dependence on transportation can benefit you the most. So here's something that got me during the pandemic, because it really happened over the last 7 or 8 years. We started getting a lot of really great, deep, rich data on the marketplace. And marketplace, I'm like, how the marketplace adjusted to things and what were some of the curves. And if you're a real data junkie, you look at these things, and you start to see patterns and you go, oh, well, that's a pattern. Well, it did this in this year, and it did this in this year, and did this in this year. And then you start to think to yourself, well, ooh, we can predict transportation. And I'm going to show you a slide. Well, the slide's already up on the screen. So Michael, thank you for jumping ahead a little bit. I would caution you to try to predict transportation, because remember, it's a derived demand on the U.S. economy. If you want to understand how transportation may grow, look at the U.S. economy. But if you want to understand how transportation has its pressure points, I would tell you to look firmly at regulations in our marketplace. All right, so we've had 3 marketplaces that caused higher rates to happen. 2003, 2014, 2018, and then the pandemic. 2003, 2014, 15 area were run by hours of service and changes in administration, but mostly hours of service. 2018 was driven by ELDs, all regulations imposed. By the way, when you hear the word regulation, just put in your mind, it's a law, because you can't not follow the regulation or they stop your operation. Okay, so it's a law. So that goes into things. So you had all 3 of those that were driven by regulations. And some people look at me and go, well, the pandemic was a health thing, Brent. It wasn't a regulation. Our government asked us to behave differently, and that's a regulation. And so we did, and that changed things. And so what causes all these markets are regulations. This screen that you're seeing in front of you is put out by Noel Perry. He's been tracking it for 45 years about how much more capacity do we need in trucking to overcome the drag that a regulation would put or could put on the trucking available capacity. It's a great slide. So you'll see it back to 2011 to 2027. The biggest thing right now, look in the red, is speed limiters. Now that's probably going to kind of be very decrease in importance through the Trump administration, but it may come back because, but if we were to get speed limiters, if the FMCSA was to require speed limiters on all 3.7 million commercial trucks in the industry, we would have another pandemic marketplace, because it applies over every provider. And it's the reverse provision. You're not getting more freight, you're just getting a whole lot less trucks, because it would reduce the number of drivable hours, because you would be limited to a certain speed limit. So this is such a great slide. Truckstop, we produce this. We update it every single month to you being able to look at what's going on in the marketplace. The biggest impact right now is the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, which so far has taken, I think, 308,000 truckers. They put them out of service now, and only about 40% of them are coming back. So we're losing truckers to the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. And what's interesting about all the rules and regulations around marijuana is that because it's legal in some states, marijuana is the #1 thing that puts someone out of service. So it's a very interesting thing, but super important for you to look at this. And let's go to the next slide, because I want to give you some hope here. I mean, this is something another thing. This is something that my chief economist gave to me as well. It's called the contractive. It is a theory that was brought to the Russian parliament back when Stalin was in power back in the 1800s by an economist called Kondratiev. And basically what he said to the communistic rule of Stalin was, hey, free markets are better than communists, or better than socialistic markets. They just are, because of innovation. The curves, the positive blues that you're seeing on the top part of this are innovations within an economy. And when you've got innovation, economies expand. And that's the driver in this. It's so important. And this is why, like, when you're thinking about your business, how are you innovating your business? What new technology, what new capacity are you adding? What new thinking are you adding? How are you investing into people that can actually bring that to the best benefit of your operation, whether you're a shipper, whether you're a broker? It all resides on innovation in a marketplace. And I'll give you just a reference point. When we went from horse power, actual horses, to steam power, locomotion and trains, the increase in the technological increase was 16,000%. So you get any type of an increase in efficiency, marketplaces have the ability to expand. And so I absolutely love this slide, because it talks about the power and the impact of innovation. And if you're not doing that in your business, you're basically working yourself into obsolescence over it may take 1 year, it may take 20 years, but you've got to continue to invest into innovation in your business. And I know Vicki had a great point on this as well.
Yeah, I thank you for bringing that up, because I think the point I want to make here is we have powerful tools today to use to be able to adapt and adjust when the market changes. Also, when our businesses change, overlaying for each one of the audience members in their business is what's going on in their business. Are they acquiring another business? Are they disposing of a business? Are they getting into a new market? All of those things. And you need tools to manage your transportation that allow you to set parts of it up to just run as daily operations, and other parts that you can set parameters on so that you can flex within on your rates, on your capacity, on your contracts, all of that, and be able to adapt for, automate for efficiency and adapt for precision, really. I think that's the name of the game. And, I notice in your chart here, you mentioned AI. We are absolutely positively going to be a big user of AI in just about every way you can think of, and many other ways we haven't thought of yet in our transportation systems, because it's just going to be a no-brainer that it's going to make things better. And I look forward to that. I don't think we're working on a couple of those right now at MercuryGate, but I don't think we've even scratched the surface on what we're going to be able to do that get us much closer to that ability to, adapt for precision. And the companies that do that and do it early will have competitive advantage.
Yeah, great point, Vicki. Appreciate you bringing that up. That when it comes to advances in any data information, and AI is a big advancement, data innovation, you have to look at it as, what can I gain from it? And then, do I need to lease expertise in it if I can't employ it, or do I need to employ it and build that out in my business? Because I heard this said in a conference a while back that AI is not going to replace jobs in the marketplace. It's just going to replace people that don't know how to use AI. Because you really need to fundamentally, it basically can automate a decision for you faster. Now look, you got to understand both sides of it, and how it works and how it operates. It's not designed to replace humans. We still need humans for so many things in business, because as I just learned the other day, and I thought this was put really, really well, AI is going to solve so many standard problems we have with data processing and data understanding. But one thing AI can never do is it cannot automate judgment. You still need human beings for judgment. So the idea of understanding how data works within, say, the MercuryGate platform or the Truckstop platform or whatever platform that you're using is a super important thing to know, so you can get the best out of the investment you've put into those platforms that can help power your business faster and faster and faster. I always go back to brokerage companies that, I understand the normal rate at which the carrier managers, that those are the ones that secure the trucks, to put freight on the trucks to be able to get the freight to move so they can make a profit. I know that a really good carrier manager can get about 8 to 10 of those a day. Well, what if through AI and some data automation, that 8 to 10, which is a very positive and a good thing for a good response from your carrier manager, what if that could move to 11 to 15 or greater? And you don't have to put more money into your business to get more volume out of your business. So the idea is that if you're not looking at these things, you're just going to go slower than everyone else. And it's funny, I love this saying, in technology and automation, it's just what we're all in now. It's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. All right, so you got to learn to be fast no matter who you are, because you want to be able to take care of the customer's needs. So I think we got
a great segue into our get into our Q&A there, Brent, and I want to invite everybody again to submit their questions in the Q&A panel. We already have a few of them coming in, and we do have just a couple of minutes of time left. Brent, I'll toss this one over to you, and you as well, Vicki. I know it's something on everybody's mind. Talk about theft and how organized crime, and I assume organized crime revolving around the theft of trailer quantities and inventory. How is that affecting the freight landscape and rates? And maybe we can throw fraud into that too, with fraudulent brokerage activities that's going on. How is that affecting the current freight landscape and the rates? And again, just a couple of minutes of time left.
Yeah, sure. I'll just tell you this. It's the first layer of evaluation now. So you need great automated platforms to help you with that. You need to be able to process a tremendous amount of data because freight moves fast. It doesn't move slow. If in the spot market, if you're in the contract marketplace, it's on an organizational aspect. But fraud went from normal to about 300 to 400% above normal in October 2022 when the market pivoted back down to normal. And it's not because the market pivoted back to normal. It's because organized crime realized they could come after $1 trillion marketplace that didn't have a lot of cyber security in it. So my encouragement to every player, and this includes shippers as well, make sure that your providers of transportation have a great way of evaluating their partners that move the freight for you, and make sure that you're using systems that can validate that that's an actual certified or legitimate player in a marketplace. And I'll tell you this, that most of the systems that run freight, like Truckstop and other MercuryGate, have really good checks and balances on that. It's really the outside marketplace that doesn't have as many checks and balances. And so it's a challenge, but it's the first filter of information that you need to look at to make sure that you're not going to have anything stolen. And strategic freight is another part of this, where they come in and they steal 10 or 20 truckloads of something. So there's different levels, and there's lots of players in this marketplace now that are doing a good job at it. So investigate them. If you don't know, I'm sure you know about them, but investigate them as quick as possible to help you keep what's rightfully yours.
Another question come in, and I think this one's right up Vicki's alley. It almost seems like a trick question. When will we see AI features in the MercuryGate product? And Vicki, that's already at work, right?
Yeah, there are already some AI features in the MercuryGate product, and they're specifically in our multi-mode optimizer, and there will be additional, and it's in layers, really. So much of the natural language processing that kind of hits the layer of customer service or self-serve as far as our technology, our documentation and education is concerned. But then AI that takes the mountain of data that MercuryGate sits on and uses the historical data, current data, and then makes decisions, really machine learning decisions. That's being worked on for our optimizer product and a couple of other products right now.
Yeah, so nice little sneak peek there. And just a couple of minutes left. And Brent, you provided a tremendous wealth of information. A lot of times in our industry, we talk about drinking from a fire hydrant or a fire hose. And I wonder if some of our audience feels that way. I kind of do. Let's just give them a 30-second takeaway that lets them understand what can we expect from the freight marketplace kind of in the year ahead.
Yeah, sort of kind of just a quick recap. Normalization and balance. And normalization means that both parties have equal ability what I mean by parties, shippers, manufacturers, same word, and transportation providers are going to be more balanced in 2025 and going into 2026. And so my 30-second to you is learn how you can both best benefit each other, because the more that's shared, the more both parties can depend on each other, and if both aren't getting to the solution that they need, then neither one of them's benefit, and one party will suffer and will go away. And shippers need transportation providers, and transportation providers need shippers. So yeah, it's balance in the market, and know that you need to work really beneficially with each other.
That's a great place for us to conclude our webinar today. And thanks so much for everyone sharing your time and your information from Vicki and Brent. To learn more about MercuryGate Smart Transportation Solutions, visit MercuryGate.com. You can find out more about our portfolio of transportation management technology. Visit Truckstop.com to find out about their broad variety of solutions that can help you in the marketplace as well. You can also visit for the website at MercuryGate.com for our Knowledge Center. That's where industry trends are regularly updated and provided for you, just like the details that Brent has provided it for us today. So thanks again for our panelists, and on their behalf, on behalf of Brent, on behalf of Vicki, and everyone at MercuryGate International, thank you for joining us for this look at the logistics landscape.